Maru is just another shelter dude, living in a cozy little nursery surrounded by robots. Inside those walls, everything's perfect and easy like some fairy tale. But the moment he steps outside, the world is nothing but a mess. Bigger than P. Diddy scandals, we have machines that could rip him apart in seconds, and supernatural freaks who are even worse. He's clueless, soft, and completely out of his depth. Thinking it's comfy, little life is all there is. But everything flips upside down when he's forced to survive in the hellscape, thrown into the battle of his life. That school was built like a damn cage, until Kyo knew at 14 years old. Sitting through another boring-ass test, she was just about ready to doze off, until the last question popped up. Do you want to go outside or the outside? That wasn't normal. That wasn't even school-level weird. That was some next-level, reality-breaking type of nonsense. Meanwhile, in a Tokyo that looked like the world gave up on it, 15 years ago, 20-year-old Kiruko and 15-year-old Maru were out here, scraping by. The city was nothing but skeletons of buildings and busted-up roads. And speaking of skeletons, the two of them just stumbled into a house, looking for food, only to find the dried-up remains of the couple, who didn't make it. Kiruko figured they probably starved. Nothing to do but keep moving. Didn't take long before trouble found them. A gang popped up all cocky and hungry for a fight. Kiruko pulled out her gun, the so-called Kira beam, trying to play tough. One of the gangsters wasn't buying it. He called her bluff, and that's when things popped off. Maru, moving like he'd been built for this, made quick work of them. But Kiruko decided, put the cherry on top. Firing off the gun, a whole damn laser beam blasted through a metal pole, melting that thing like butter. The gang folded real quick after that, letting them into their hideout with no more lift. Once inside, Kiruko spotted a generator. That's when she dropped the bomb. Her fancy gun ran on batteries, and she wasn't even sure if it was in a fire. Back there, the gang furious. Too late for them though. Kiruko didn't care. She had a more important question. Ever heard of a place called Heaven? One guy spoke up, saying there was something nearby called Tomato Heaven, close enough time to move. But not before throwing a few partying shots at the gang. On their way out, hours of walking later, they stumbled on a small inn run by a woman who clearly had a survival game unlocked. Kiruko pulled out some old photos, showing a guy named Robin and a doctor. Hoping for some answers, the lady had nothing. Tough luck, they decided to stay the night. Maru took a soak in the outdoor bath, while Kiruko, for reasons only she knew, got naked in the bathroom and tried to kiss a reflection, only to get interrupted by the motel owner. Awkward dinner wasn't any better. The owner straight up accused him of being in some incest mess, just because Maru called Kiruko sis. Kiruko shut that down real quick, explaining that it was just a nickname, and she was only his bodyguard, nothing more. Maru, hearing that, looked like someone kicked his puppy. Then came the real bad news. The owner mentioned a creature roaming around at night, a man-eater, straight up nightmare fuel. But as long as they stayed inside, they'd be fine. Night rolled, and the man-eater showed up right on time. Kiruko was about to knock out for the night, when something fell off too late. She realized the food had been drugged. Her vision blurred, her body felt heavy as she collapsed. The motel owner stood nearby, shotgun in hand, while outside, the monster pressed up against the window waiting. Life inside Heaven keeps rolling. Same as ever, like the outside world doesn't even exist. Meanwhile, Kiruko and Maru wake up to the worst kind of alarm clock. A monster screeching in the night. Stepping outside, they barely get a second to process before some bird like Haruki comes swooping down, claws ready to rip them apart. Maru moves fast, reading the thing's attacks like an open book. He calls out its patterns, giving Kiruko the perfect chance to blast it with a Kira beam just as she's about to pull the trigger. Motel owner steps in, yelling at them to stop. The reason that thing is her son. For a second, everything freezes. Then just like that, the pause ends in the worst way possible. The woman drops dead, gone before anyone can react. No time to think, no time to grieve. Maru handles a Hirako, taking it out, like it was just another obstacle on the road to survival. When it's over, the two don't stick around. No point as they leave. Maru finally shows Kiruko something he's been carrying, a syringe filled with some kind of drug. His mission? Injected into someone who looks just like him. Over at Tomato Heaven, that sets something off in Kiruko's memory. Back when Makaru was on her last breath, she handed over to Kira Beam and told her one thing. Get Maru to Heaven. The road takes him to a farming village, run by a man named Kuzu. The place seems calm, but the second Kiruko steps in, someone swears they recognize her, not as herself, but as Kairiko Takaya, an electro kart racer. Strange. but not the weirdest thing they've dealt with. While wandering the farm, Maru notices something else. The logo on a stack of boxes matches one on Kiruko's gun handle. Too many coincidences, not enough answers. Whatever is going on, it's leading them back to Tokyo. Later on a ferry, the conversation takes an unexpected turn. Maru, feeling bold, tries making move on Kiruko. That's when Kiruko finally lays it out. The body might be a woman, but the mind that belongs to a man? Sitting on that ferry, Kiruko finally lays it all out for Maru. 5 years ago, back when life still had some sense of normal, there were 2 siblings, Haruki and Kiruko. They lived in an orphanage just trying to get by. Kiruko was a star, a big-shot electric kart racer, while Haruki spent his time tagging along with Robin, a man leading a group that fought man-eaters. Then came the day everything shattered. During one of Kiruko's races, a rookie spotted a man-eater right there on the track. Thinking he could handle it, he rushed in, only to realize too late that he was out his league. The monster turned the tables fast. Sinking his teeth into him, Kiruko didn't hesitate. She crashed her cart straight into the beast, wrecking herself in the process. She wasn't about to let her little brother go out like that, she fought tooth and nail, yanking what was left of a rookie's torso from a monster's mouth, and then gunfire. Someone shot. The next thing Haruki knew, he was waking up in a hospital bed. But something was off. No, everything was off. His body wasn't his anymore. It was Kiruko's. The doctors had done something to them. Something unnatural. Months passed. And when Kiruko tried to go back to the orphanage to figure out what the hell had happened, she found nothing. No orphanage, no familiar faces, just emptiness where her old life used to be. 4 years later, drifting through life with no real answers, she ran into Maru and Akano, and now here they were. Maru listened, but it was a lot to take in. His brain struggled to process it, to make it make sense before he could even fully react. Life did what always did. Threw another problem their way. The ferry shook. A guttural roar split the air from the dark waters. Something massive rose, a fish monster, but worse, with long arm like appendages reaching out, ready to drag the whole damn boat down. Meanwhile, back inside heaven, Cuckoo stared at Kona's drawing of a baby and something was wrong with it. The baby had a face that wasn't right. Cuckoo had seen one before, and they didn't have faces inside heaven. Cuckoo leaves Tokyo down a restricted corridor. Sneaking past the ever-watchful eyes of the adults, they slip into a room filled with incubators, and what Tokyo sees send a chill down her spine. Inside the pods like babies, but they aren't normal. Their faces have no features. Just eerie concentric circles where eyes, noses, and mouths should be instead of legs. They are strange, twisting appendages that move unnaturally. Tokyo takes a hesitant step closer, but the moment she reaches out, an alarm blurs the facility. Panic sets in, but somehow they manage to slip away before getting caught. Meanwhile, the adults continue their work, managing facility with the help of Mina, the AI controlling every inch of this place. Mina isn't just overseeing operations, it's keeping tabs on everything, including the budding relationships between the children, love, desire, curiosity. It's all being recorded. Later, Tokyo visits her friend Torio, who is weak and barely holding on. Whatever sickness he has, it's eating him alive. And the adults don't seem interested in saving him. With the last of his strength, Rail grips Tokyo's hand and whispers a warning. This place isn't what it seems. It's dangerous. She has escaped before it's too late. Meanwhile, out in the chaos of hell, Kiruko and Maru face down the fish bees that just try to sink their ferry. This thing isn't just a brute. It's smart. It coats itself in water, keeping its body wet to survive. Kiruko, thinking fast, leads into the vessel's interior. Surrounded by stacks of old cardboard boxes, the beast flails, but it's too late. The dry air and crumbling paper absorb its precious moisture, and within minutes, it shrivels up and dies. With the threat gone, the ferry finally reaches port. One of the crew members pulls Kiruko aside, pointing to bird logo she's been chasing. It belongs to me, a company that a facility not too far down the road. Following the lead, Kiruko and Maru arrive at crumbling structure. Marked Mitsuba Home Center, the logo is there. But something about it is off. It doesn't match the one on Kiruko's gun handle. It's similar but not the same. Another dead end, or a clue that they're missing something bigger. Maru throws hands with a group of thugs, and hold his own like it's just another Tuesday. Kiruko watches as he dodges counters and lays them out, one by one, barely breaking a sweat. After wiping the blood off his knuckles, he tells Kiruko a little about himself. How he was born the same year as a great disaster, grew up in an orphanage, and how everything fell apart when he was 7. The kid scattered and he had survived on the streets, dodging gangs and worse, made it to 10. Before Makura picked him up and gave him a shot at something better. Later, Kiruko trades in some old books to get a map, figuring they'll need it if they don't want wander in circles. As they check their route, Maru brings up the war collapse theory, breaking it down for Kiruko. How everything spiraled into chaos and left the world hanging by a thread. While they're talking, some ferry passenger from before rolls up, looking desperate. Says he needs protection for himself and his cargo until he can get to a doctor. At Immortal Order claims this doc can grant eternal life by sticking parts of a man-eater into people. Sounds like a scam, but there's a catch. The flesh is already degrading if they don't move fast. It's useless. Kiruko, and exactly thrilled, but Maru figures is worth checking out. So they decided Hill Zone on their map. Mark for clean water. Meanwhile, back in heaven, Torio's time runs out. His illness takes him, and the director is not happy. The guy's fuming, demanding a cure be found before the upcoming day of fate. But that's not even the worst part. After Trail's cremation, the medical team pokes around the ashes and finds something they definitely weren't expecting. A large, freaky-looking bug sitting there like it owns a place. Maru and Kiruko roll up to some rundown village and run into a girl named Tato. She seems chill, points them to a spot where they can find clean water, and offers to watch their stuff. Sounded easy enough. They are down into an underground station, but the second they step in, things go south. Something big moves in the dark. Next thing they know, a beast charges at them. Not some creepy Hirako, not some even freak. Just a straight-up wild bear, looking like it's been through hell, and ready to throw hands with no way out. They scramble up a busted concrete pillar, the bear circling below, waiting for them to mess up. Sitting there sweating bullets, it hits them without each other. They're done for. They've been through some rough spots. But this is survival mode. Kiruko studies. Akira beam takes aim and blast the thing clean through. Bear hits the ground, twitching for a second before going still. That night, while Maru is trying to shake off the insanity of the day, Kiruko's deep in thought. Too many things ain't adding up. Every person they run into seems to want something. Maybe protection, maybe info, maybe something worse. Either way, she's not buying a whole friendly act. Meanwhile, in another room, Tottori makes a move on Maru. She's real for about it too. Gets close, presses up against him, but the second his hand touches her chest, his stomach flips. Something ain't right. He can feel it. The unmistakable thump of a Hiroko's heart. Under her skin, now he's stuck in the worst situation in his life. Half panicking, half try to figure out how to get out of this, without making it weird. Then Kiruko busts in, and now he's got to explain this mess, while also not dying while all this chaos is unfolding. Up in heaven, Tokyo was knocked down the infirmary dreaming of a Jew. The vision gets weirder when she looks down and sees her body, covered in a deep red blotch, spreading fast. Later that night, still shaking, she walks straight into Kona's room. No words, no hesitation. They get close, holding on like they're the only ones in the world. Meanwhile, Dr. Satari is putting pieces together. He spots a fresh boot mark by the incubator room, and instantly knows someone's been poking around where they shouldn't be. And judging by the timing, it's gotta be Tokyo. After reaching the area where they hope to find Immortal Order, Kiruko and Maru realize they have no idea where to start looking. With no clues, they decide pop aboard. Offering their services to kill man-eaters, they spend a day in the same spot, catch fish from a nearby river, and enjoy a meal together in the evening. Meanwhile, without their knowledge, members of the Immortal Order spot them. The guards inform a doctor about the two strangers, and the board they put up. Their boss orders them to bring Maru and Kiruko in. However, before the guards can reach them, a group called Livi-man, which strongly opposes Immortal Order, takes the duo into hiding. The leaders of Livi-men tell Kiruko and Maru that the Immortal Order is conducting a terrible experiment. They claim the group is trying to achieve immortality by transferring human consciousness into machines. They also reveal that the Immortal Order is hiding a man-eater in their basement. Livi-man offers to hire Maru and Kiruko to kill the creature before it escapes and causes destruction. They plan a protest the next day to distract the guards, while sneaking Kiruko and Maru into the building through back door guarded by their double agent. After making their way into the basement, Kiruko and Maru are surprised to see how well at the place is. Kiruko thinks this could mean they have power for life support systems, but despite searching, they see no sign of a man-eater. Maru, uneasy from the start, shares a suspicion that something is off. He wonders if they're being set up. And if there's actually no monster at all? Kiruko also has her doubts, but feels the situation is too elaborate to be fake. Just then, Maru spots a small man-eater perched on a car. Relieved that their suspicions were wrong, he kills it, but moments later, they spot another one, a few meters away, which leads into a much larger creature. Realizing they have finally found the real target, Kiruko prepares a shoot, but as she aims, she starts hallucinating. She sees dozens of man-eaters attacking her, and Maru devouring her bit by bit. Terrified, she tries to fight back, but nothing works, lost in panic. She struggles as the creatures overwhelm her. Maru suddenly kisses her on the lips. Snapping her out of the illusion, he reassures her that everything is fine, and that she was just hallucinating. Regaining her composure, Maru swiftly kills a large man-eater. Just then, a man in a black suit appears, holding a gun. He looks at the dead creature and sighs in relief. Seeing Maru and Kiruko, he realizes they were the ones who killed it, and for some reason asked for their help. Instead, responding, the duo asked him about Dr. Usami. To their shock, the man calmly reveals that he is Dr. Usami himself, while Maru and Kiruko killed the man-eaters. Living member stage a loud protest against Dr. Usami and his man. At first, things remain peaceful, but then a protester throws a stone at the guards. This angers opposing faction, and one of them picks up the stone and hurls it back. Miss Mozahashi barely dodges it, but ends up falling off the shoulders of her man. She lands on her head and is unable to stand. She is immediately taken back to headquarters. With the top leaders assess her condition, that's when they learn that Maru and Kiruko have already killed the man-eaters in the building. Seizing the moment, one of the leaders tells the angry protesters that Miss Musahashi is dead, riling them up and convincing them to launch a violent attack on Dr. Usami and his men, killing anyone in their way. Meanwhile, Dr. Usami takes Maru and Kiruko to a secluded room, where he shows him a patient being kept alive by several machines. He explains that he is unnaturally extending her life, because once she dies, she will turn into a man-eater. Usami asks Maru if he can use his power to kill her, and after inspecting her, Maru confirms that he can. It is then revealed that the patient's name is Hashio, Usami's wife, who communicates using a tablet. When Maru asks Hashio what she wants, she simply requests to see the sky before dying. Everyone works together to fulfill her final wish. Meanwhile, Living Men members have already begun their assault on Usami and his followers. Once Hashio is gaze in the sky as long as she wants, Maru uses his powers to end her life. Before dying, he leaves Usami a final message, thanking him for letting her die as a human. Shortly after, Dr. Usami gathers his followers and informs him of her passing. He tells them to head to location on the map, where they can start fresh. When asked why he's not going with them, he says he wants to give his wife a proper burial. First, Kiruko takes the opportunity to show them a picture, Robin asking if they know him. Surprisingly, they recognize him as Dr. Inu, who was with them 2 years ago. Robin, or Dr. Inu, had extensive surgical knowledge, and was also learning Usami's techniques. He once claimed he wouldn't let anyone else die, before vanishing without a trace. Later, Usami carries Hashio's body to the terrorists for burial, while Kiruko and Maru wait outside, unaware of how deeply depressed he is, as they discuss mundane life matters. Usami sits silently, hold his wife's arms. He looks at her face, kisses her forehead one last time, then pulls out a gun and ends his life. Maru and Kiruko rush to the terrace upon hearing the gunshot and find his lifeless body, while Maru feels that his power only brings death and misery. Kiruko tries to reassure him that he is not to blame for everything. Meanwhile, the Whitecoats take over the building where Usami once worked, unaware that one man either still lurks in the basement. A few years ago in heaven, Ajura, this freak who could heal and float, shows up in front of Kona. Say peace out then, straight up hung itself down in hell. Kiruko find a button with some bird logo on it, the one Usami had when he croaked. After Quake shakes the place to hell, Maru and Kiruko bump into Gita, this shady dude who's trying to hustle him for info. He throws out 3 wild theories about the great disaster, some meteor crash, an alien invasion, or a damn war. Then he starts talking about his life, stuck in a wall town, being used as a damn worker, and breeding pig by the women running the show. Until he broke out, Kiruko doesn't buy his BS, only to realize they're standing outside an old Takahara Academy branch. Inside, they find some documents saying it used to be a school for kids. Meanwhile, back in heaven, the director drops the bomb that Tokyo's pregnant. Maru and Kiruko tag along with Chi-Chi on a brutal 5-hour road trip to the wall town to see if his kid's still alive. When they get there, the place looks totally abandoned. but it's crawling with a spider-like man-eater that freezes everything around it. After Kiruko finally puts the damn thing down, the trio gets approached by two ex-breeding pigs, who drop the bomb that Gigi's kid's still kicking. Juchi has his emotional, gut-wrenching reunion with his son Yugo. And Kiruko's already planning to hit up the Takahara Academy in Ippon. That night they get jumped again by the same man-eater. And Maru finally figures out it's Ugo, who doesn't even know what he's capable of. Juchi decides to stay with Yugo and the others, handing over his van to Maru and Kiruko before he goes full savage and murdered the guy who raised the alarm when he broke out of Wall Town. Meanwhile, in heaven, more kids show up at the facility, and things are about to get even crazier. After snatching Gichi's van, Kiruko and Maru keep rolling down the road. Meanwhile, Dr. Suatari's having a fiery chat with the Takahara Academy director. She's grilling him about the combatants, and it turns out they all woke up from suspended animation, not even close to being stable. On top of that, the prototype cure beam's finally ready, and she was freaking out, worried that the illness might spread to the fifth-year students. Dr. Satari, being real about it, tells her there's no guarantee that won't, so the risk is still on the table. And two starts talking about the responsibility to make sure heaven thrives in this broken world are stuck in, and of course they end up in a nasty argument. Meanwhile, Kiruko and Maru crash at a rundown house and spot smoke rising from the direction of the Ibaraki facility. Since it's already late, they decide to hit it up. The next morning, back at Takahara Academy, Mimaheim tries getting good with a new student named Oma, but when she stares into his eyes, her worst fears hit her like a truck, and she ends up in the medical room. Later on, she makes peace with Oma, who feels guilty about what went down. The next morning, Mima and the other students wake up to the announcement. They need to gather at the pool for first period. They're told to wear their uniforms, not swimsuits, because it's not a swimming class. Some of them, of course, don't get the memo and show up in swimsuits anyway. The students are hyped to see Tokyo after a few days, and go up to her asking how she's holding up. Tokyo tells them everything's cool now, and she's joining them soon. But then the real purpose of pool gathering is revealed. They're told it's a long test, but don't worry, they got plenty of time to finish it. Still, the instructions are all over the place. If they're lost or can't find an answer, they just have to trust their instincts and go with what feels right. Then comes a kicker, the most cryptic instruction of all. The students are told they need to find their way to the outside. Of the outside, that's their role. Zero code naturally. They have no clue what that even means. But here's the weird part. They all feel like they're being called by their real names the first time. The whole class is in the dark about the real meaning of the test, and they end up knocking out that night. Clueless as ever, but when they doze off, that's when things really start get twisted. It's clear the test begun. But why are the students at Takahara Academy being called Hiroko? It's a mystery. But given that these kids are probably the same damn monsters Maru and Kiruko are fighting outside in their rec world, things are looking ugly. Add to that the fact that Mimaheim saw Harako in the same spot where Kona was in the medical room earlier. It's all pointing in one direction. On test day, most students are pumped to finally find out what the test all about. Meanwhile, the people running the place are freaking out because most amina systems are down. Out of nowhere, the ground shakes, and the students rush to the housing area. A second later, something crashes in the ceiling of Takahara Academy and storms into the building. Panic sets in as everyone tries to find somewhere safe, while the students are left confused about what's going on. Meanwhile, Maru and Kiruko stumble upon a whole market as they look for their next stop. Turns out people have come together to create a city, using whatever resources they have to rebuild society. Bit by bit, the currency Maru and Kiruko are carrying doesn't work. Here they find out they can each get 5 tokens if they register, so they head to the Ministry of Reconstruction, get themselves signed up, and get their coins. While there, Kiruko shows him a picture Robin. See if anyone knows him. It turns out the locals call him the chief, and he agrees to meet with her. Maru decides to stay behind in their rented room when he hears Kiruko wants to go meet Robin alone. When she does, it's an emotional reunion. They catch up on everything that happened since they split up later that night. After Kiruko finishes her bath, Robin invites her into a room. There he makes a question who she really is. With her rookie's brain inside her head, he then inappropriately touches her and tells her, watch the mirror while he does it. Back at Takahara Academy, the ceiling starts collapsing, and the kids scramble for cover. When they finally regroup, Mimaheim suggests they head to the pool, thinking it's probably the safest place. But she wants to check something first. Shiro and the others realize she's probably figured out she can go to the outside, or outside, so they decide to follow her. Instead of heading to the pool, Kona tells him he'll take care of the kids while they're gone. As they get closer to the wall, Mima and her friends are nervous about what they might find. When they finally make it outside the wall, they're stunned to find themselves in the middle of a thick jungle. It's nothing like anything they've ever seen. Mima can't wrap her head around the endless blue sky and thinks the ceiling must just be way too high. But the beauty of the world they've been hidden from all their lives leaves them in awe. Taka and Enzu keep venturing to the outside world, while Mima and Shiro decide it's time to head back and tell everyone about what they discovered. Back in heaven, Soyotori hands Ashima baby, claiming it's Tokyo's. Ashima then drops the bombshell, announcing the Noah project, a plan to save the kids later. When Soyotori meets with Tokyo, a better director shows up. Try to snatch the baby, which triggers Tokyo to unleash your power. Meanwhile, in hell, Maru finally gets his act together after 2 days, and decides to go after Karuki. When the guard bring up Robin and his ex's shady activities, Maru fights his way into filtration plant. There he finds Kiruko tied up and naked. Furious, Maru goes at Robin, but Kiruko steps in, stopping him from killing the bastard. The two of them leave, but Kiruko struggles with what happened to her. Maru doesn't hold back this time, confessing his feelings again and promising to protect her. He watches as Kiruko rips up Robin's photo, her tears falling as they drive off, continuing their search for heaven. Elsewhere, Shiro, Taka, and Enzu are cruising on a speedboat toward the bright city, ready to see what lies ahead.